The shouting began before sunrise. Inside one housing unit of Rikers Island, metal doors shook, officers ran toward the sound, and men pressed against cell bars trying to see what was happening. Officer James Walker had just turned into the narrow hallway when the emergency alarm started. Red lights flashed across the walls. A voice on the radio shouted fast, almost too fast to understand. Unit C day room, multiple inmates down, back up now. James ran. At the far end of the unit, the day room looked like pure confusion. Plastic chairs were overturned. A table had fallen sideways. Several inmates backed away toward the wall while officers moved in to separate two groups already split apart by fear more than distance. In the middle stood Marcus Reed, breathing hard, shirt torn, staring toward another side of the room where another inmate sat on the floor holding his arm and shouting for medical staff. No one in the room looked calm. Because everyone understood what had just happened. A fight between two jail groups had exploded during morning movement inside one of America's most notorious jail systems. And the worst part was that officers believed it had been planned. James saw another officer kneeling beside an injured inmate near the wall. "Get everyone back," someone shouted. But nobody moved fast. Because another problem had already begun. At the back of the day room, two younger inmates were arguing again, louder now, pointing toward Marcus Reed. One shouted, "This started because somebody opened the wrong door." James looked at the control booth window above the room. The officer inside the booth was yelling into a radio too, shaking his head. That meant the movement schedule had broken. And at Rikers, broken movement often meant trouble. Marcus Reed looked toward James and said one sentence that made the room feel even colder. "This wasn't supposed to happen today." Before James could answer, every light in the day room flickered once. Then the side security gate clicked open by mistake. A sound nobody wanted to hear. Because behind that gate stood another section of inmates who were not supposed to mix with anyone in the room. The gate moved only a few inches. But that was enough. Several heads turned at once. And one inmate near the open gap smiled. Then the second alarm began. 2 days earlier, Rikers Island had looked grey under low morning clouds. The jail complex sat between water and city bridges, separated from the rest of New York City but close enough that planes flying toward nearby airports passed overhead all day. Inside, noise never fully stopped. Doors slammed. Voices echoed. Radios clicked. Men called through bars. Unlike prisons where silence could rule long hallways, Rikers carried constant movement. New people arrived daily. Court dates changed daily. Housing assignments shifted daily. Officer James Walker had worked there 4 years and knew that routine at Rikers never stayed clean for long. Every shift began with reports. Every report carried warnings. Possible tension in one dorm. Possible argument in intake. Possible movement delay. That Monday morning, the report mentioned Unit C. "Watch the day room schedule," the supervisor said. 2 groups asking for separate recreation. James knew what that meant without names being spoken. Some inmates wanted distance because small conflicts had already started. Inside local jail housing, small conflicts often grew quickly because men from different neighborhoods, different crews, and different cases could end up in the same place overnight. At breakfast, James walked the row while trays were passed through slots. Marcus Reed sat near the front of one common area table. Marcus was 27, held on robbery charges, and had been at Rikers 3 months. He usually stayed quiet. That mattered because quiet inmates often noticed more than loud ones. James passed near him and heard Marcus tell another inmate softly, "They switched beds again." The other inmate answered, "That's not random." James wrote that sentence in his head even before he wrote it on paper later. Bed switches happened often because of jail crowding. But inmates paid attention to who moved near whom. By noon, another inmate named Kevin Ross refused recreation. When James asked why, Kevin shrugged. Too crowded. That sounded ordinary. Yet officers knew refusals often meant inmates expected trouble. That afternoon, Officer Linda Perez checked bed assignments again. 3 inmates had changed sections in 48 hours. Not unusual by paperwork standards. but unusual because all three had previous problems with men already in Unit C. Linda frowned at the list. Somebody upstairs is moving names too fast. James nodded. And nobody downstairs likes surprises. Later that day, Marcus Reed asked for extra writing paper. Legal note, he said. James gave it after checking approval. Nothing unusual there. But by evening, 2 more inmates asked for paper too. Different bunks. Same housing area. Again, not illegal. Still noticed. Night at Rikers never became fully quiet. Voices continued through walls. Footsteps passed. Radios crackled. At 1 a.m., Officer Linda heard tapping near one side of Unit C. Not loud enough to report as emergency, but patterned. 3 taps. Pause. 2 taps. She checked cells. Nobody speaking openly. Still, she wrote it down. Tuesday morning brought rain outside. Inside Unit C, breakfast arrived late because one delivery cart stalled. Small delay. Small irritation. But delays mattered in crowded housing. Marcus Reed stayed near the back wall during breakfast. James noticed he watched the officer booth more than usual. What are you looking at? James asked. Marcus answered without smiling. Trying to see if today's normal. James said, this place is never normal. Marcus gave a short nod like he agreed. At noon, intake sent 2 new inmates into temporary beds near the dayroom entrance. One of them, Troy Bennett, immediately asked who slept nearby. That question told officers enough. People wanted to know who surrounded them. Who watched them? Who belonged to which group? Linda Perez later told James, Troy and Marcus came from different borough cases. James checked quickly. One linked to Bronx arrests. One linked to Brooklyn arrests. Again, not automatic trouble. But at Rikers, officers never ignored patterns linked to outside street history. That afternoon, a small argument started near showers. Nothing major. Raised voices. One shove. Officers stopped it fast. Still, Marcus Reed afterward told James quietly, you should not put Troy near the side gate. Why? Marcus looked away. Because he thinks somebody asked for him. That answer stayed with James all evening. At 5 p.m., Unit C lights flickered once. Maintenance blamed old wiring. Rikers had many old systems. Nothing shocking there. Yet later, Officer Linda reported one side gate delay during lock cycle. The gate paused before closing. Only 1 second. Still, 1 second inside crowded jail housing mattered. Wednesday morning began with another schedule change. Court movement reduced officer numbers in Unit C. That meant fewer staff during morning dayroom opening. James disliked that immediately. Too many men, fewer officers, moving schedule already tense. Marcus Reed noticed too. You short today? He asked. James ignored the question. At 6:40 a.m., dayroom movement began. 1 row at a time. Names called carefully. Doors opened by section. But then a radio call distracted the booth officer. Another unit needed confirmation. 1 second of split attention. And one cell door opened before another fully closed. 2 inmates entered dayroom too close together. Then a third moved before ordered. Troy Bennett turned instantly. Words came first. Sharp. Fast. Marcus Reed stepped between 2 men before officers reached them. For a moment James thought maybe it would calm. Then someone near the back shouted, "Wrong side." A chair scraped hard across the floor. Another inmate moved forward. The room changed immediately. Officers shouted commands. Some inmates backed away. Some froze. Some moved toward walls to avoid being trapped in the center. James saw Marcus trying to push one younger inmate backward, not forward. "Stay back," Marcus said. But another voice answered from across the room. "You knew this was coming." Then the first fight started. Not the whole room. Just one sharp clash in the center. Officers rushed in fast. Within seconds, more inmates shouted from side benches. Not all joined. Many moved away. Yet the room filled with confusion faster than officers could separate who started what. That led to now. The alarm. The overturned chairs. The injured inmate near the wall. Marcus Reed breathing hard. And that side gate clicking partly open when it should not move at all. James looked toward the narrow opening. Behind it stood 6 inmates from the adjoining section. They were supposed to remain locked until full separation happened. Now they stared through the widening gap. Linda Perez shouted from the control booth, "Gate malfunction. Hold positions." But one inmate behind the gate already stepped forward. Marcus Reed turned sharply. And his face changed. Not fear. Recognition. He knew the inmate coming through. James saw that instantly. The inmate at the gate was Troy Bennett's older brother, Eric Bennett, housed in the adjoining section and never scheduled near this room at the same time. That should not have happened. Eric stopped at the half-open gate and looked directly at Marcus. Then he said quietly enough that only nearby people heard, "So now we do this here." James moved fast toward the gate. But before officers could fully close it, the power flickered again. And the gate opened wider.